Hello, this is Magnus again, and I am doing more Ignite interviews. And this time, actually, the first one I've done this week, strange enough, is with a speaker and an attendee. I've only interviewed Microsoft people, but this time I have the pleasure of talking to my old friend Gaurav, and he's from India, which is going to be very apparent soon by his appearance. and it's a very interesting story he has to tell. He's made a tool to inspect blobs and figure out if you use them or not. So and also he had a couple of sessions. So let's begin with the sessions. Hey, how are you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
Yeah, well, I'm very, very well. See, there you are. And so you had two sessions. Just mention which sessions were.
So one was on Azure Storage and how you can use Azure Storage to store, petabytes of data. And there we talked about the new archive tier and all the other new cool features that are coming out in Azure Storage. And the second session was on, integration of Azure Storage with big data workloads. So how you can perform, big data scenarios using Azure Storage. So those were the two sessions.
Good. I'll put them as show notes to this recording so people can find them. So tell me about this tool that you have been working on. It's as I understand it, it figures out if you're actually using your blobs and maybe suggests that you archive them.
Yes. Yes and no, something like that, right? So essentially, what has happened is recently Azure Storage announced an archive tier for the blob. So, it's like cool storage, not really cool storage, but a cooler storage where, if you have compliance related data or email archives that you want to keep, for regulation purpose, for compliance purposes. And this is the data that you have to keep it, but you very rarely need to read from it. So that's where, archive tier is the one where you would like to put that data.
Yeah, that data doesn't have accessibility in the same way, and it's
yes, you cannot.
And it's very, very, very cheap.
It's extremely cheap. Yeah. So what we did was, basically I built a tool, right? It's a command line tool. What it will do is you specify, hey, go ahead and inspect my storage account, right? And then you specify certain parameters like, hey, find out the blobs that have not been modified in, say, in last 30 days, last 60 days, things like that. And or I'm only interested in blobs that are over certain size, only find out blobs which are gigabytes in size, and then what this tool does, it goes over your storage account or a blob container, it gives you a list, and then you say that, hey, and it will tell you that, okay, you are storing them in hot access tier right now, which is what almost all the blobs are. And then if you were to move them to, let's say, a cool access tier or an archive access tier, right, how much are you going to save? In terms of storage cost, in terms of read cost, in terms of write cost. So, so normally when people think about storage, storage cost, they only think about, the cost to store that data.
Yeah.
They do not think about the cost of reading the data, all the transactions that they will be doing on the data. So, so that's what this tool does. Actually, it takes all the costs into consideration, because if you read a lot from these archive tiers or cool tiers, then it will be insanely expensive for you to store that data. So this tool does that, and then what it also do is that it will move these blobs from hot tier to cool tier or archive tier for you. So with the tool. With the tool. So you just say, yes, I want to move these blobs, and it will do that for you.
This is very, very, very interesting. Sorry about that. I have a bit of a cold. It's very interesting to hear about this, because honestly, this is so much true engineering, right? Yeah. It's really engineering. It's algorithms, and it's optimizations, and it's just an engineering task that you have solved.
So, but then, so I agree with you. This is obviously engineering thing, but I see a lot of business value in it, right? I mean, you go to a customer and you say. So let me step back for a second, and what this tool will also do is it will also analyze your local file shares. Yeah. So it will analyze your local file shares, and it will tell you that if you were to move them into Azure Storage, it will give you a cost breakdown that, hey, you have these terabytes of backups or things like that. If you if you move them to Azure Storage, and put them in hot access tier, this is how much you are going to pay in terms of storage cost.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, they have a lot of backup data that they want to put that in cloud. So this tool can help them analyze the cost, right? And then you get all the benefits of Azure Storage. 3 copies and all those kinds of all the goodies of Azure Storage will come with that.
That's extremely interesting. And for those people who don't know, Azure Storage data ingestion, sending data to Azure, has no cost.
Has no cost.
And if you have files that are archived or on your own servers that you're never using, it doesn't actually matter how long it takes to send them to the cloud. It
Exactly.
doesn't care.
They're there,
right?
they are, you don't have to worry about backing up the tapes, making sure that the tapes are not corrupted and things like that. So
and if you're an enterprise, you can even connect a virtual network to the cloud, and you can make sure that your blob storage account doesn't even have a public endpoint
exactly.
on the cloud
that's
anymore.
the new thing that they
right?
recently announced.
And additionally, is there storage at rest on this?
So yes, so encryption at rest, yes, so that's
Encryption
there.
at rest, sorry,
Encryption
yeah.
at rest,
Yeah, yeah.
so that is there, and now this is turned on by default.
Yeah.
Right. So that's one cool thing that you create a storage account. By default, encryption at rest will be turned on. So the data that is stored in Azure Storage, it's encrypted by default.
Yes.
That's one cool thing. The second cool thing is bring your own key.
Yeah.
Right. So that's another thing that
So literally, you can have a storage account in Azure with archived backup data,
right.
dirt cheap storage, no
Right.
public endpoint, encrypted at rest with your own key.
With your own key.
And honestly, that has to hit most compliance scenarios.
Exactly.
It has to.
Right. And then not to mention the increased storage size. I think it's at 5 petabytes per storage account. So that's
5 petabytes.
5 petabytes per
My
storage.
God.
Yeah. So
That's
and then
insane.
so I in the talk storage team mentioned that in due course of time they will remove this limit as well.
Yeah.
Right. So virtually you can store any amount of data in Azure Storage and without worries. I mean, that's the biggest thing that my data will at least there will be 3 copies of my data lying there.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
So all those
incredibly interesting.
Oh yeah.
So obviously people should check out your talk. And
Yes.
this was a very good conversation. I'll put this up straight away. Thank you so much for talking about it.
Thank you, Magnus.
today.
Thank you for having me.